What insult have your parents said that is stuck in your head as an adult? Half man, half mattress, my old man, when I wouldn't get out of bed. Edit, for those asking, he was being amazing and funny. 1990, I was 16, and had to get up at 4:30 for work. He got me up and out the door, every morning. A nice wee story. You can't even laugh right. My mom, in a weird moment, I thought we were bonding. There's something inherently extra evil when someone tells you your joy is wrong. Not a parent but a grandparent. I was adopted when I was 12 years old. My parents were both drug addicts, so I was in and out of foster care most of my life. My adopted mother's father turned to me on Christmas Eve, when no one else was around, and said, "My daughter should have never adopted you. She should have let you stay on the streets, where you belong." He got nicer as he got older and sicker, but I couldn't find it in myself to forget what he said, even almost 10 years later. Went to the funeral for moral support, but was indifferent about his passing. What did I do to deserve a fat kid? Extra ridiculous, considering that even if you were fat, you were a kid. Who controls what kids eat? Their parents. Got to love parents, blaming their kids for things they created. My little brother was drowning. I tried to save him, but also almost drowned. We got rescued by a neighbor. My mom told me that they should have left me in the pond. I haven't spoken to her in many years. Like a half a century ago, my mother and I were talking, and the topic of someone's eye color came up. I forget who. I sincerely asked, "What color are my eyes?" "They are sort of a gray-green." She looked at them closely and told me, "Sort of a shit brindle." I still bring that up from time to time. Mom was talking to Dad about me while I was right there. I was bullied in high school and it had an effect on my grades. While discussing my education, she said, "Look at him. Can't you see there's nothing in there? Just look at how he sits there. He can't do this. He's not capable of more. This is it. He's nothing." It gave me a drive and motivation. It also gave me a constant need to prove myself. Edit, I never imagined this to get so much replies. For the people wondering, this happened almost 20 years ago, and I have now found peace with what she said. My mom has a lot of mental issues, but she tries her best. She's made a lot of progress, and is still working on battling her inner demons. And in the end, she has since done a lot more good than bad to me. I will never forget what she said, but I no longer hold it against her. People shouldn't always be reduced to their worst moment. "You're so annoying," said to me as a young kid, while I was expressing enthusiasm over some new interest. Later, my father complains I never tell him anything. After I had rambled on a new, exciting interest, my dad pulled me over to stand in front of him. "Here's a quarter. I want you to walk on down to the Snappy Mart. When you get there, put the quarter in the phone. Then, call someone who cares." He gave me the quarter and I broke down, because 10-year-old me didn't have anyone to call. I'm still convinced my being interested in anything makes it worse. I can still hear his cold, sarcastic voice in my head. "Dad, when I was about 10, if I kill you, I can make another one just like you, and no one will notice." My mom said this once, but replace "kill you" with "give you away." Hits different when you're at win. My mom told me a story that happened to her when I was just a toddler. I am 69 and my mom is long gone. She said, she was in a store one day with me, and a Hispanic couple approached her and wanted to buy me. I was a cute little red-headed child with freckles and light eyes. I told my mother, she should have sold me, I might have had a better life. My mom got upset. My parents divorced when I was young, and they hate each other. My mom would call me my dad's name when she was really upset. What makes it worse is that I confided in her that I never wanted to be like my dad. She used that ammunition against me. In 7th grade, I was learning how to write better poetry, thanks to an awesome teacher. I was so proud of a collection I made, so I let my mom read it. She asked me, "Do you need to be put in a mental asylum?" I was so upset, and as I was growing up, I didn't share any of my art with people, regardless of the medium. Even now, I still hear how serious she was when she asked me that. My mother said lots of things like that. I'll just talk about one of the most memorable. While I went to go inside the corner store, she stayed behind in the car. Outside the store was a kid that had a crush on me. He grabbed my ass, and I bitched him out. My mother saw all this. In the following days and weeks, she basically accused me of being a slut, implying that I somehow invited it. She tried convincing my father of this, told her coworkers about it, everything except, being a mom infuriated, that someone touched their daughter like that. My mother took the approach that I should be thankful for the attention, be flattered, I should encourage it. I wasn't allowed to be upset. The only reason I had kids is, to serve me. I only wanted, one boy and one girl. Bitch had 3 boys. Parents who view their children, as nothing more than property, are the worst kind of parents. She told me, I was acting just like my father, when I would get upset. I would just get kinda pissy and sulk. He would go on rampages and scream, and hit and throw things. He pushed her down the stairs once. I would never lay a finger on my current partner. The worst part is, I looked just like him. I was wondering, if my mother always expected me to turn into my dad. I prove her wrong every day. Edit. Thank you to everyone who shared their own stories. It's good to know I'm not alone. Also, to the people suggesting I had previous partners I would actually abuse, I can understand the wording could have been better, but how dare you? I have heard so many times, you'll be like your father. Scares me to get into relationship or take of my nieces and nephews. I don't want to hurt nobody. I'm happy you proved her wrong. My father said to my mother, when she finally left him, the only one of the 3 kids that has done any good is the middle one. I'm surprised that the other 2 aren't in jail. I was an only child and lonely. When I asked for a sibling, the response was, if you want to know why we don't have more kids, go look in the mirror. When I was 10 years old, my mom once said, if I could go back in time and make sure I never gave birth to you, I would in a heartbeat. Never forgot it. Talked to her about it a couple of times years later, and her responses ranged from, that never happened, to, oh yeah, and I suppose I'm just the worst mother ever, and finally, yeah, but I didn't mean it, you know that. Messed me up, though, to be honest. Another one was, older sibling, was the only child we actually planned for, the rest of you were accidents. I don't think it was intended as an insult, but being told your entire existence was an accident, as a child, kinda stung. Not me, but a friend, after her dad had died. She told her mom that she missed her daddy, I say daddy, because she was roughly 8 at the time. You miss him so much? If you ever say that to me again, I swear, I'll chain you to his gravestone. You sound like a pig under a gate. I was 10, and working to expand my vocal range. To this day, I stop singing when others are around. The one that lives rent-free though, is, now, find someone else to take care of you. Thanks for the help, I guess. My father is very good at maths. Especially at doing it in his head. I always was self-conscious about that. One hike in the mountains, he gave me a math problem, and I went totally blank, tried to frantically solve it in my head, but couldn't. Finally he said, you once were intelligent, that's long gone. Starting a monologue about how dumb I am. I was 13 at the time. In my end-30s, we had a chat about chemistry, which I excelled in at school. That led to other subjects and it turned out, he wasn't really good in any subject we shared, except math. I was in most, except math. There are so many things, I really don't remember most of them. Once my stepmom called me, a lying sneaking little shit, because she thought I stole her melatonin, when she just used it all, and forgot about it. But the thing that I think about a lot is, my dad once when I was like 10 to 12. I don't remember what it was about, I just remember him poking me in the chest, with enough force to knock me down. He said, you're such a piece of shit, I can't wait until I get to kick you out, and spat in my face, as I was laying on the ground. That was the man, who was supposed to be Superman to me. I was supposed to sit on his shoulders, to see a parade or something. I was probably 14, it was 97 or 98, and I was walking up the stairs one afternoon. My dad was on the landing, looked at me, paused and said, your forehead. It's getting zitty with it. I've told him about how it's something I still think about, now that I'm an adult. He has zero recollection of something I remember, so vividly. The axe forgets, but the tree remembers. That my sister and myself will never be more than a hole for a man to F. We both shrugged this off, as kids, but as adults, we both realize how F up that is, to put on your daughter's view towards relationships with men. Needless to say, we both struggled with setting boundaries in relationships. It took a lot of inner reflection on our parts, my sister and myself, to build self-esteem and learn boundaries with men. Thanks Mom. Not really an insult. My brothers and sister lived out in Utah. We are live outside of Cincinnati. My mom, dad and myself drove to Utah, because my sister was getting married. The first night of being settled in, we went out to dinner with my older brother's fiancée and her family. My oldest brother was there with his wife, and my sister was there with her fiancé. Again, we were there for my sister, yet the first night we were there, going to dinner with my older brother and his soon-to-be wife and in-laws, took priority. We are sitting at this restaurant, and my mom straight up blurted out, "My older brother is her favorite child." My oldest brother, my sister and I just looked at each other just like slowly nodding going like, "No shit, Mom. We know. Doesn't make it okay for you to say it out loud, though." I was 14, so that was about 20 years ago. Still effing stings. I hate all my kids. I wish I could line them all up and shoot them. My mother, to me, when I was about 15, because I forgot something at home, and we were gonna be late to a church meeting. Very Christ-like of her. Through an unfortunate event, I contracted herpes right before I went home, on spring break. I was naive, and had no sex ed, so, I didn't know what was going on, and I was super sick with a 104.5 degrees Fahrenheit fever. I had to tell my parents. My mom called me a whore. We'll never forget that. Thanks Mom. Note, they're Mormon. You're not skinny. My mom, when I mentioned wanting to dress as Al Woods for Halloween, when I was 10. Yeah, I was overweight as a kid, but that sure as hell didn't motivate me. To this day, whenever I see an outfit I'd love to wear, I hear that line in my head. Parents, that shit doesn't go away over time. Your kids just learn to put it in the backs of their minds, but hear you me, they still remember. I'm so sorry. I also heard this when I was 10, and it's never gone away. I won't wear a bikini or some dresses, because of this. I think the worst part is that, at 10, they were still responsible for helping me make healthy choices, and they didn't. And then blamed me for it. It's taken quite some time to accept that this isn't true, but being told, I'm selfish and arrogant, for speaking about things I might like, or how I'm feeling, when I was a young child. Growing up, it was more speak of when you were spoken to, as you had no real reason to speak otherwise, unless you were going to risk being screamed at, or physically hurt, and I only ever had sentences based around me, saying sorry, thank you, and please. As an adult now, even when someone wants to listen to what I have to say, I still occasionally, unintentionally, cut myself off, and stop talking out of fear. And the fact that someone is actually willing to listen to what I have to say, but I'm working through it. Stop feeling sorry for yourself. Not really an insult, but is what I'd hear anytime I had a negative emotion. Having emotions was grounds for punishment. Now whenever I'm sad, I hear that voice in my head. My mom used to say that whenever you cry, you only cry for yourself. She first said it when I was 9 years old, and was crying about her going to hospital, because I was really scared about it. Instead I was called selfish, and forever remembered that phrase. Needless to say, emotions are hard to process, although, I'm getting better nowadays. You're the biggest mistake I ever made. My mother when I was 5. I'm 32 now, and it's been the undercurrent for our relationship ever since, constantly wondering if anything I've achieved or struggled for is something she's genuinely proud of, or just relieved to say I wasn't a total failure on her part. My dad, very recently, told me, 33F, that I don't have a career, and that I was only hired as a charity case. The hardest part is that my dad is normally really supportive and kind, and this was not said in anger. I am a project manager at a real estate development company that my Phil owns. I have a university degree in a related field, landscape architecture and urban planning, and project management. Experience from a previous job. I never planned on working for my Phil. I am getting paid about half of what I could be making if I worked for another company. I am sticking it out because my husband and his brothers deserve to inherit the company. Their dad uses the inheritance as a way to control them, and they have put in so much free labor, despite never being paid by the company and working FD in completely separate careers. I'm worried my Phil's semi-recent drinking habit, mixed with his unrelenting narcissism, is going to lead to him squandering the business, so I'm staying to keep tabs on it. I know no one is going to read this. It still feels good to get off my chest. You're turning out exactly like I was. This was during a screaming match, when I was 15, and had just got caught smoking. She did add several details of what she did, and assumed I was doing. When I turned 18, I called her. Said, "Guess what, Mom? I'm not pregnant." Not so much an insult, but was simply told, they love my sister more than me. I mean, it made sense, looking at how different we were treated, but to hear it out loud was pretty devastating. It must have hurt me more deeply than I realized, as it still sucks thinking about it, 15 years later. I was working my first job at 16, and couldn't find my wallet, and needed to leave for work. I frantically ran around the house, trying to locate said item, getting more and more panicky by the minute. My mom stopped me and said, quite seriously, "Are you on drugs?" I was so offended, but now I laugh. She's been gone 11 years now. Love you, Mom. My father during my drug rehab, "I just can't stand people like you. Even if you start working now, it's too late, and will never be enough." Well, I am like 10 years clean now, became a single dad, raised my son, and I am earning $75K per year now, so I was able to get over it. Grown people don't get presents. My dad. The grown people were me and my 2 siblings, all under the age of 15. So, now that we are actual adults, he gets nothing. I tell people, I don't celebrate Father's Day, and he gets nothing on his birthday and Christmas. When he asks why, I say, I was always told, grown people don't get presents. He fully regrets telling us that now. My father once said, if I asked you a glass of water on deathbed, I would end up dying thirsty. Just because I was late, helping him in the store. I was just about 7 years old then, and that wasn't only time he told that kind of stuff. I'm 20 now, but that moment is still stuck in my mind. Sometimes, I can't sleep thinking about why he was talking and acting like that. I had gotten a report card, set it near my father, and went to the bathroom. When I got out, he asked me, "Did you wipe your ass?" I said, and then he followed up with, "Because if you didn't, you can use this," and tossed the report card to the ground. I don't think that wound can ever heal. Had my stepdad tell me, just a few months after 9/11, that I was a terrorist, and holding the family hostage. That it's too bad they couldn't send a special forces team to take me out. A few weeks later, he said, I was a cancer on the family, and should be cut out. A lot of this was centered around them having to take me to school events they didn't want to go to. The question was not specifically about insults to us, so here's a harmless one that stood out as a child. At a family reunion, I got seated next to a great uncle, or third cousin, or something. He was very religious. Grace was long. Dinner was practically a sermon. There was a story about his car not starting, but Jesus making it run, so he could get to work. I finished eating, and moved on to play volleyball with my cousins. Hours later, I told my dad about it, and he said, God won't let it rain until he talks to Uncle Don first. Coming from an obviously religious family, this blasphemous ridicule was hilarious to me. When I was younger and helping my mom renovate, she yelled at me for not having a straight enough eye. I said, I do have a straight eye. And she told me it was the most crooked, straight eye she'd ever seen. I am still painfully critical of all my renovations to this day, and lack any confidence to do a satisfactory job. Oh, and this year, on separate occasions, I have been told by both my parents that I'm a disappointment. So yeah, effing 2 thumbs up here. My dad used to call me a creature when I was younger. He'd joke and say I'm ugly, an animal, and had a flat face. When I was 16, he wanted to know why I wasn't keen on me having my photo taken. He was a photographer and had hundreds of photos of my sister. I told him I was ugly and could bear to see myself in photos. He seemed shocked and asked why. I said, it's because you keep on calling me ugly. I tried to commit S many times when I was younger. This was a big part of it. Turns out, he thought I knew he was joking. He later would apologize and swore he thought I was beautiful and thought I could see it too. Asked me to consider modeling. Needless to say, I still can't accept compliments or look at photos of myself. Kids don't get jokes or teasing. Don't tease your kids like this.